Imagine waking up one day to find that every decision you've ever made, every seemingly personal, deeply thought-out choice wasn't really yours. You stand in your kitchen, coffee mug in hand, staring at the box of cereal you've been eating for years. Why this one? Did you truly choose it, or was it chosen for you long before you ever stood there, spoon in hand? Now extend that thought beyond breakfast, to your career, to the city you live in, to the partner you share your life with, to the dreams you chase or gave up on. How many of those decisions were born from your own authentic will, and how many were quietly whispered into your mind by parents, culture, media, or the countless invisible hands that shape human behavior? We love to think of ourselves as free, agents navigating an open world of endless possibilities. It's comforting to believe in the mythology of choice, that with enough hard work and enough willpower, we are the architects of our lives. But if that's true, then why does it so often feel like we are living someone else's script? Why do people wake up in their 40s or 50s, exhausted and bitter, wondering, how did I end up here? You tell yourself you chose this job. You tell yourself you chose this relationship. You tell yourself you chose this lifestyle. Peel back the layers. Was it really your choice? Or was it the path of least resistance, the one that looked safest because everyone around you walked? It too? Here lies the unsettling paradox. We believe ourselves to be free, yet we live as though trapped in invisible cages. Cages built not with iron bars, but with expectations, family obligations, social norms, consumer desires carefully manufactured to keep you reaching for the next upgrade, the next achievement, the next thing that promises fulfillment, but delivers only momentary relief. Consider how early this conditioning starts. Before you could speak, you were handed a name, an identity, a label. Before you could form a single independent thought, you were taught which colors were for you, which toys you should like, which emotions you were allowed to express. You didn't choose these things. They were chosen for you. You were old enough to question them. You'd already internalized them so deeply that they felt like your own thoughts. Is it any wonder so many people feel restless, numb, or disconnected in the middle of their lives? They chase dreams they never truly wanted, by things they don't actually need, and live in constant fear of deviating from the script. But here's the cruelest part. The illusion of choice is so convincing that even when you feel trapped, you blame yourself. You tell yourself you're lazy, undisciplined, unlucky. You think you're the problem when in reality, you're playing a rigged game, and yet you keep playing. Because what's the alternative? To admit that the life you've built might be a house of cards? To confront the terrifying possibility that you've never really been free? Here's where the paradox tightens its grip. The illusion works best when you don't notice it. It thrives on subtlety. No one is physically stopping you from quitting your job, leaving your city, or redefining your life. But the weight of invisible shoulds keeps you in place. You should stay because it's practical. You should settle because it's safe. You should keep going because everyone else is doing the same. So you silence the voice in your gut, the one that dares to scream that something feels off. You call it irrational. You call it dramatic. You convince yourself that discomfort is just part of adulthood. But deep down, the question lingers. If I am truly free, then why don't I feel free? It's a question most people bury under routines, distractions, and endless scrolling. But once you let it in, once you allow yourself to wrestle with it, changes everything. It gnaws at you in the quiet hours. It forces you to confront the uncomfortable truth, perhaps. Your life isn't as self-directed as you want to believe. And if that's true, if most of what we call choice is nothing more than a carefully orchestrated illusion, then what does it mean to live authentically? That's where the real journey begins. To understand why the illusion of choice holds such power, you must first accept a difficult truth. Humans are not born as blank slates of pure autonomy. From the moment you enter this world, you are stitched into a web of influences, biological, cultural, psychological, that shape the way you think, feel, and decide. What you call choice is often a negotiation between these forces, compromise between your authentic desires and the expectations of the invisible audience you've been taught to perform for. Carl Jung once wrote, "Till you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is the heart of the problem. Most people live under the command of unconscious scripts. They think they are steering their own ships, but the currents beneath them, deep psychological drives, social conditioning, and inherited belief systems, are doing most of the work. Why is this so hard to see? Because these influences don't come at you with flashing signs. They arrive in whispers embedded in the stories you were told as a child, and the subtle rewards and punishments that taught you what was acceptable. Consider this. When was the first time you truly questioned what you were taught about success, morality, or love? Chances are, you didn't. You simply absorbed them, because survival, especially as a child, depends on belonging. You adapted to the beliefs of your family, your school, your community, and as you grew older, these beliefs hardened into truths. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche warned of this very danger. He saw society's moral codes not as universal laws, but as constructs designed to tame the individual. For the revaluation of all values, a radical reassessment of what we hold sacred. Yet most people never attempt this revaluation. Why? Because to question the beliefs that give your life structure feels like standing on the edge of a cliff with no ground beneath you. Psychologically, humans crave certainty. It's encoded in our survival instincts. The brain seeks patterns because predictability once meant safety. But in our modern lives, this craving for safety often becomes a prison. It keeps you working jobs you despise because leaving feels too risky. It keeps you in relationships that suffocate you because solitude feels unbearable. It convinces you that your options are limited, that your dreams are impractical, that your voice doesn't matter. Arthur Schopenhauer took this further, suggesting that human freedom is often little more than the recognition of our own limitations. He argued that our will, what we believe to be our most personal, authentic force, is itself bound by conditions we didn't choose. Our genetics, our upbringing, our circumstances. You might think you want something, but do you want it because it's truly yours to want, or because you've been conditioned to? Like of advertising. It's not just selling you a product, it's selling you an identity. It takes your deep psychological need status, belonging, validation, and attaches them to objects. You don't just buy shoes, you buy the idea that these shoes will make you desirable. You don't just choose a career. You choose the story about what kind of person this career says you are, and yet the illusion runs deeper than consumerism. Jean-Paul Sartre's existentialism exposed the unbearable weight of freedom, the idea that we are condemned to be free, meaning we alone are responsible for our choices. But instead of embracing this responsibility, most people flee from it. They hide in what Sartre called bad faith, convincing themselves that their lives are determined by external forces, parents, society, fate, so they can avoid the terror of real freedom. After all, if you accept that you are truly free, you must also accept that you are responsible for everything: your joy, your suffering, your failures, your unrealized potential. So what do we do instead? We construct an elaborate illusion, a comforting story in which we are making choices within a limited framework, never noticing how small that framework really is. Aldous Huxley once observed that the most perfect dictatorship is one where people are so conditioned that they love their servitude. That's the genius of the illusion of choice. It doesn't require chains. It doesn't need force. It convinces you that you are free while you obediently walk the path laid out for you. Even Viktor Frankl, who endured the unthinkable horrors of concentration camps, noted how much of human suffering stems from a loss of meaning. In a world of manufactured desires and prepackaged identities, it's easy to forget that meaning isn't something handed to you. It's something you create. But when you let others define it for you, when you live without questioning who you are and why you do what you do, you become spiritually numb, and here lies the hidden problem. It isn't just that we live under illusions, it's that we cling to them. They shield us from the existential discomfort of standing naked before life's uncertainty. They make us feel secure in a chaotic world. To tear them down feels like inviting chaos into your soul. But if you listen closely, if you let yourself sit with that discomfort, a quiet voice begins to emerge. It's the part of you that wonders, what if there's more than this? What if I've been living on autopilot? What if the freedom I long for is closer than I think, but I'm too afraid to reach for it? This is where the psychological roots of the illusion become visible. It is a defense mechanism, a survival strategy, a way of numbing ourselves to the painful yet liberating truth that real freedom begins where the illusion ends. But before we can even imagine breaking free, we must confront the cost of staying asleep. What happens when a person lives their entire life inside the illusion of choice? At first glance, it seems harmless after all. You're doing what everyone else is doing. You have a job, a family, a routine. You follow the blueprint handed to you. But deep down, something begins to rot. The price of this illusion is not just a lack of freedom, it's the slow, quiet erosion of your soul. Think of how many people live with a persistent, gnawing restlessness they can't name. They wake up tired, not because they didn't sleep enough, but because they feel emotionally hollow. They experience bursts of joy, new gadgets, vacations, promotions, but the satisfaction quickly fades. Why? Because these choices weren't born from an authentic desire. They were chosen for them, packaged as fulfillment by someone else. It's why so many people dread silence. Silence is dangerous. In silence, you hear the voice you've been ignoring, the one asking, is this it? Is this all I'm meant for? So you fill the void with noise, endless scrolling, binge-watching, shopping, working yourself to exhaustion, anything to avoid looking at the truth that your life might not be truly yours. Niur, L-O-G-I-C-A-L-L-Y. This illusion reshapes your brain. Dopamine's a neurotransmitter that drives reward-seeking, becomes hijacked by a system designed to keep you compliant. Corporations, media, even cultural narratives exploit this circuitry. They give you endless choices that keep you stimulated but never fulfilled. You think you're making decisions, but you're following scripts written by those who profit from your compliance. This is how modern slavery works, not through chains, but through desires you didn't choose. You feel free because you can pick between 10 different brands of sneakers, but you never notice that the life you're living was handed to you as a narrow, pre-approved menu. You are a consumer of prepackaged identities, the successful professional, the good parent, the loyal citizen, the obedient believer, but the consequences stretch beyond individual lives. Entire societies become trapped in cycles of passive conformity. We tell ourselves we live in democracies with freedom of choice, but how meaningful is that freedom when our votes are driven more by emotional manipulation than rational thought? How authentic is our agency when we spend more time consuming ads than contemplating our existence? Cognitive biases deepen the trap. Take the status quo bias, the brain's tendency to prefer things to stay the same. It convinces you to remain in unfulfilling jobs or relationships because at least it's familiar. Or the confirmation bias, which drives you to seek out information that validates your existing beliefs, keeping you comfortably enclosed. In your mental bubble, these biases reinforce the illusion, making it nearly impossible to break free. And the longer you stay asleep, the heavier the cost becomes. Dreams wither. The boldness you once had as a child fades into quiet resignation. You trade your wild, unfiltered desires for socially approved ambitions. You stop asking, who am I really? And settle for, who do they want me to be? But perhaps the most devastating consequence is that you lose yourself in the process. A collection of borrowed opinions, hand-me-down dreams, and second-hand beliefs. Your life becomes an echo chamber of other people's choices. This is why midlife crises exist. They are not just about aging, they are about waking up one day and realizing that the life you've built feels foreign. You achieved the goals you were told to achieve, and yet you feel empty, because those goals were never truly yours. Even relationships suffer under this illusion. How many people choose partners not out of deep alignment, but out of fear of being alone, fear of breaking social expectations, fear of deviating from the script? They end up building entire lives on shaky foundations, quietly resenting themselves for not listening to the quiet voice that said, "This isn't right." Unseen consequence is that most people don't even realize they're in pain. They normalize their misery. They call it being an adult. They convince themselves that joy, meaning, and freedom are luxuries reserved for a lucky few. They adapt to their cages so well that they forget they're trapped. But look closely, and you'll see the cracks, the burnout, the depression. It's the constant need for distraction. These are symptoms of a deeper problem, a soul suffocating under the weight of a life unleave. And what about those who do sense something's wrong? Many fall into the trap of performative rebellion. They switch jobs, move cities, change aesthetics. But unless they confront the deeper illusion, these are just surface-level changes, new cages with prettier walls. Here lies the darkest truth. The illusion of choice robs you not just of freedom, but of responsibility. When you believe your life is fully self-directed, you take ownership of your decisions. But when you live inside the illusion, you outsource that ownership. You can blame your parents, your culture, the system. It's easier to say, "I didn't have a choice," than to face the terrifying fact that you do. And yet, if you can recognize this trap, if you can name it, something begins to shift. That's when the questions start to take shape. What if I've been living a life I didn't choose? What would happen if I tore it all down and started over? Most people never get that far. They keep playing the part written for them, mistaking the comfort of predictability for the freedom of true choice. But there are those who dare to rebel. And their rebellion is nothing like what you've been taught to imagine. Rebellion is not what you think it is. It's not dyeing your hair a different color, quitting your job in a dramatic blaze, or moving to another country to find yourself. Those are surface-level jolts, temporary disruptions to keep you from confronting the deeper problem. True rebellion, the kind that shatters the illusion of choice, begins not with action, but with awareness. It starts with the courage to stand still and face yourself, to strip away every borrowed belief, every expectation, every inherited truth, until you're left with the raw, unfiltered question: what do I truly want, beyond what I've been told to want? This question terrifies most people, because it requires dismantling the identity you've spent your entire life building. You may discover that your career, the one you worked decades to achieve, was never your dream, only a safety net. You may realize that your relationships exist more out of fear than love. You may confront the unbearable thought that the person you've been presenting to the world isn't who you really are. Carl Jung called this confrontation the process of individuation, the journey of integrating your shadow, of becoming whole. It's not about rejecting society entirely, but reclaiming the parts of yourself you buried to survive within it. Jung warned that until you do this, you are ruled by unconscious force, so reacting, conforming, performing while believing you're choosing. So how do you rebel against the illusion? First, you must learn to pause. You cannot hear your inner voice. When your life is a blur of noise and distraction, set aside the phone, turn off the screens. Sit in the discomfort of silence. At first, it will feel unbearable, like standing in front of a mirror that reflects everything you've avoided. But if you stay there long enough, you'll start to hear the faint hum of your authentic self. Second, practice what Nietzsche called the revaluation of values. Question everything. Why do you define success the way you do? From you holding that definition, why do you pursue the goals you pursue? Are they truly yours, or are they society's idea of who you should be? This questioning is not about rejecting all values, but about rebuilding them deliberately. It's about choosing what matters to you with eyes wide open. Third, confront your fears. Sartre was right. Freedom is terrifying. It removes the safety net of excuses. You can no longer say, "I can't because of them," or "I have no choice." When you accept freedom, you accept that you are responsible for shaping your life, if that means making painful, inconvenient, or unpopular decisions. And this is where rebellion takes shape, not in reckless abandon, but in deliberate defiance. It's waking up every day and refusing to live on autopilot. It's asking yourself before every major decision, is this truly mine? Some find this rebellion through radical life changes. They quit jobs that crush their spirit, even if it means uncertainty. They leave relationships that numb them, even if it means loneliness. They abandon the scripts that no longer serve them, even when it means starting over at zero. But rebellion does not always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks like quiet reconstruction. You can remain in the same job, the same city, the same relationship, but with a fundamentally different consciousness. You stop performing for approval. You stop outsourcing your worth to others. You choose deliberately who you are and how you live, even if it means disappointing those who expect you to stay the same. This is what Viktor Frankl understood in the darkness of the concentration camps, even when everything external is stripped away. The last of human freedoms is the ability to choose your own attitude, your own meaning. Rebellion, then, is not about control over circumstances, about control over yourself. Yet, be warned, this path is lonely at first. When you stop living by the rules of the illusion, you disrupt the comfort of those who still live inside it. They may call you selfish, reckless, or ungrateful. 8. They may try to pull you back into conformity because your freedom challenges their cage. This is why many give up halfway. They crave freedom, but cannot tolerate the discomfort of standing alone. But if you persist, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel lighter, more alive. You experience the quiet exhilaration of knowing that for the first time, you are truly living not as an echo of others, but as your own voice. This rebellion requires constant vigilance. The illusion will always try to seduce you back. The advertising, the social pressure, the cultural narratives they will whisper. That it's easier to go back to sleep, to choose comfort over consciousness. But you must remember, comfort is the cage, not the cure. And so, rebellion becomes a practice, not a one-time act. It is the daily work of staying awake. Yes. It is the courage to say no when everyone expects you to say yes. Of creating meaning instead of consuming it. But here's the ultimate twist. Rebellion isn't about becoming completely independent of all external influence. That's impossible. You are a social being, and you will always be shaped by the world around you. The goal is not to escape influence, but to discern it. To choose deliberately what you allow into your life and what you reject. To live with. The awareness that while you cannot control every force that acts upon you, you can decide which ones you give power to. This is the quiet revolution that changes everything, not just for you, but for everyone who witnesses it. Because when one person wakes up from the illusion of choice, they become a mirror. They force others to ask the same uncomfortable questions. If they can choose differently, why can't I? And that is the most dangerous, most liberating rebellion of all. But what happens when this rebellion fully matures, when you don't just break free from the illusion? See the world through entirely new eyes. That is where the ultimate truth awaits. Imagine you've burned away every illusion. You've dismantled the identity you thought was yours, confronted the fears that kept you caged, and stepped into a new life of deliberate rebellion. And yet something unexpected emerges, a haunting question. Now that I am free, what do I do with my freedom? This is where most people stumble. They confuse freedom with indulgence. They think breaking free means doing whatever they want. Quitting the job, buying the ticket, chasing endless pleasures. But soon they discover a sobering reality. Freedom without direction feels hollow. The illusion of choice may have been a prison, but at least it gave them a script. Now there is no script. It's only a vast open sky. And this is where the final realization reveals itself. True freedom is not the absence of limits. It is the conscious, deliberate creation of your own. It is here that Viktor Frankl's wisdom becomes luminous. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. Frankl survived the camps not by indulging in boundless freedom, but by tethering his existence to a deeper, self-defined purpose. He understood that without meaning, freedom turns into chaos. So what does this mean for you? It means that waking up from the illusion of choice is only the beginning. The real work begins when you learn to fill the empty space left behind with distractions, but with meaning. To do this, you must answer questions most people spend their lives avoiding. What is worth suffering for? What values are truly mine, not inherited or manufactured? What kind of life would I build if I stopped living for approval? These questions don't have quick answers. It requires sitting in the quiet discomfort of your own consciousness, stripping away every easy justification, every convenient excuse. They demand that you live with what Nietzsche called the courage of the overman, the ability to face a godless, chaotic world and create values anyway. This is where philosophy becomes flesh. Sartre's existence precedes essence, stops being abstract theory, and becomes a living, breathing truth. You are not born with a preordained essence. You are not defined by your past. You are not limited to the roles assigned to you. You are free to create yourself. But this freedom carries a heavy burden. No one else can do it for you. And here's the paradox. The more you embrace this responsibility, the lighter you become. You no longer outsource your identity to cultural scripts. You no longer need constant validation. You no longer live in fear of disappointing those who expected you to stay asleep. Instead, you begin to live in alignment not with the borrowed truths of others, but with your own hard-earned clarity. You stop choosing based on what's safe or socially acceptable, and start choosing based on what makes you whole. This is not easy. In fact, it's excruciating, because true freedom forces you to confront the one thing most people run from their entire lives: mortality. Why does this matter? Because once you accept that life is finite, that every choice carries the weight of your brief existence, you start making different choices. Stop living as though you have endless tomorrows. To waste in unfulfilling jobs, loveless relationships, or mindless routines. You begin to live with urgency. You stop asking, "What do I want to do?" and start asking, "What must I do before I die?" Arthur Schopenhauer, pessimistic as he was, understood this too. He believed that much of life's suffering stems from endless striving, chasing desire after desire, mistaking them for fulfillment. The final realization, then, is not about achieving every craving, but about discerning which ones are worth your life's energy. And in that discernment, you find peace. Aldous Huxley hinted at this when he said, "Experience is not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you." Freedom doesn't mean escaping all constraints. It means engaging with reality, pain, joy, chaos, and choosing what to make of it. This is the ultimate truth. You were never as powerless as you believed, but you were also never as free as you imagined. Your life was shaped by invisible forces, yes, but now that you see them, you are responsible for deciding which ones you let guide you. You are free, but freedom is not passive. It is a daily practice of choosing, deliberately, consciously, courageously, who you are becoming. And when you finally embrace this, life changes in quiet, profound ways. You stop needing to perform for the crowd. Stop mistaking busyness for purpose. You stop chasing freedom as an escape and start living it as an act of creation. You may still choose the job, the city, the partner, the life that looks ordinary from the outside. This time, it will be different, because you chose it not out of fear, not out of conformity, not out of unconscious programming, but out of alignment with who you truly are. And when you do that, you discover the most liberating paradox of all. The real freedom was never in the endless menu of choices the world gave you. It was in realizing you didn't have to play their game at all. The illusion of choice collapses, and in its place stands something terrifying, beautiful. It's utterly yours, a life lived awake. So now the question comes back to you. What will you do with this freedom? Because the answer, whatever it is, will define everything.